This episode of the Topcast is proudly supported by Rockschool.
Traditionally, I think we think about, as I spoke at the top of the show, there's a sort of traditional classical path, which leads into potentially performing, being involved in classical music, or simply just, people learn music just for those kind of soft life skills and then because it's a nice thing to do. But there is a different skill set involved in popular music, contemporary music, than there is in classical. And that's probably reflected in the two exams. Largely in classical music, although it wasn't always the case, but largely things like improvisation are non-existent, less.
You're listening to the Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. It's Tim Topham here, and welcome back to the Topcast. We are at the start of a new month here at Top Music, and the new month is all about pop, contemporary, and jazz teaching and playing. And I'm very, very excited to have Rockschool as our sponsor for this month on the podcast. And excitingly, I get to talk to their Director of Product and Marketing today, Nathan. So really, really excited to introduce you to him and talk today about all the new offerings in the RSL Piano syllabus. They're just bringing out a brand new one. And this is going to be fantastic for teachers who perhaps have some students who love doing some of the more contemporary music, but perhaps don't fit into currently any of the other exam boards, but you know that they would thrive on actually taking an exam, or their parents would really like them to. Maybe Rockschool is a good opportunity for them to dive in and try something that's really different. And today we're going to unpack what is actually different about the syllabus. So for those of you who have used it before, today's going to be really interesting because you'll get to find out what has changed. And for those of you out there who have never used it, but maybe you've heard about it, hopefully this will give you the impetus to actually go, you know what, I reckon I could give this a bit of a shot. And if you have never heard of Rockschool, then you are in for a bit of a treat here, because this is a really, really cool show, a really great discussion, and some of the things that Rockschool are doing to help teachers is quite phenomenal. There's a lot going on right now. My guest today, Nathan Theodoulou, is Director of Product and Marketing at RSL Group, home to the flagship Rockschool brand operating in 60 countries. With over 20 years in education and a portfolio of 50 published books, he leads global partnerships with industry icons like Marshall, Yamaha, and Abbey Road Studios. A composer and multi-instrumentalist, Nathan's work spans stage, screen, and concert hall, with commissions for leading orchestras, soundtracks for Amazon documentaries and performances, of venues from the Royal Albert Hall to the National Theatre. Welcome to the show, Nathan. It's so great to be catching up with you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Lovely to be here.
It's really good, actually. We've had a number of meetings in the background preparing for this big launch you've got coming up, which we'll be talking about. So I'm just delighted to be able to share you with all of our listeners, because you have an incredible background, amazing experience, and you've got a great story to tell about this new syllabus coming up. So I thought, why don't we start with what Rockschool, or RSA Awards, is all about?
Great. No pressure intro there, Tim. Thanks. For all the listeners and viewers, I've got very little to live up to there. What is RSL Awards and Rockschool? Well, it's interesting. We've recently actually become a group of companies. So we're now the RSL Group. We started about 35 years ago. Norton York, who is our chairman and founder, started Rockschool, as it was known then, with some colleagues back in 1991, really as an alternative way to study music. At the time, if you wanted to get into a music conservatoire, you wanted to study music, get a qualification, get into the industry, you really had to go via the classical route. The only way you could sort of get into a conservatory or music college was get a grade 8 in a classical instrument, and then you could get in. And Norton was teaching at a university. People were coming to him saying, I play the drums, I play the electric guitar, I want to get on the course and I can't do it. Likewise, he had some brilliant musicians that wanted to teach and couldn't get in. So he came up with a syllabus, a way to study popular music with the same academic rigor as we've been studying classical music in graded exam form for about 150 years. So that started with guitar, bass, and drums. That was the basic trio of instruments. And now, 35 years later, it's expanded to piano, vocals, ukulele. We have a small classical offering, violin, piano, classical guitar. We've also expanded into performing arts. So we've got stage acting, screen acting, jazz dance, contemporary dance, and even alternative qualifications to what we would call in the UK GCSE and A levels, that end of high school going on into studying university. We've got teacher training qualifications. So it's an entire education business now. And yet, just over the last year, we've come full circle and we've now just launched and separated Rockschool off to be its own independent thing and kept RSL Awards as the exam board, that awarding organisation. And now we're offering people across the world the chance to actually become a Rockschool franchise, either as a fully sort of fledged bricks and mortar Rockschool where people can go and study, or by way of becoming an associate tutor. And we'll slowly roll that out to different parts of the world. So you never know, it might come to Australia in the near future. But that's basically what the group does. We are still an awarding body on the one side, providing exam syllabuses, allowing teachers to teach in any way they want and then do the exam at the end. And now we've got a complete solution on the other side of the business that provides curriculum, delivery guides, a way to actually teach and grow your business, as well as the books and the exams.
I think you handled that question very well, Nathan. Given the size of the organisation, I was delighted to have met Norton in Melbourne when he was here for an event at Rockschool, and we heard these kids playing on stage, and it was the full band set up with the lights and everything. They played with backing tracks. Some of the most phenomenal drumming I think I've ever heard. Guitarist played, pianist played. It was really cool. And the audience just loved it because it was just fun and modern and progressive. And I think it really exemplified what you're trying to achieve here with the Rockschool exam system and all the awards and everything. So thank you for giving us the overview. It is comprehensive, and you've got some of those things that you mentioned, being able to franchise this model into your own school and things is really, really new at the moment. And the technology you're building for music school owners to be able to run their studio, I think is phenomenal. So you've got a lot of plates that you're spinning at the moment. And one of the big ones is this new piano syllabus, which I definitely want to dive into today. But can you give everyone just a quick overview of what your role actually is at Rockschool? Because I know you're doing a lot over there.
I sit on the board of directors. There's a team of us, all with our sort of own areas of particular specialism that we look after, as well as coming together to help direct the strategic direction of the company. So my particular areas are product and marketing. So that's essentially, in very simple terms, everything we make and then how we sell it. So the one bit that I don't get really drawn into in the absolute nitty gritty is too much of the academic stuff. So how those plethora of qualifications that we've got are made and regulated and answering to the various regulatory bodies that we have that support all that stuff. That is our director of awarding. She's brilliant, Fern. She handles all of that. But for me, it's about the products that we make. So that'll be the syllabuses. We're going to talk about the piano syllabus today, but that's all of the instrumental syllabuses, how they're produced, how they're made. So there's crossover with the academic team there, as well as the other kind of vocational stuff. And also the products that go along with the franchise. So that's all of the tech that's going in there, all of the customer-facing stuff, how the business systems work. And then the flip side of that is the marketing. So then how we put all of that together in terms of packaging it up, how we communicate it, the content that we generate, what we film, what we put out, and how we spread that message around the world. So it's kind of fun. It's integrating two parts of the process that sometimes could sit separately. But it's nice that we can kind of think about, well, wouldn't it be great if a product did this? Because then we could tell this story with the marketing. And so you're able to build bits into the product that are really great to market. And vice versa. You're able to tell the marketing department really ahead of time, well, this product's going to do these things. Let's come up with a really clever way of getting that message out. So yes, always busy.
It gives you that opportunity to go full cycle through why we're creating it. Let's create something and let's bring it to market and share the stories about why we've done it all in one place and under one.
And we can listen to the feedback too, right? Which is the other bit, because obviously you get that feedback from customers, and you have to listen to it. You've got to react. You can't just kind of churn out the same stuff year after year and just, totally ignore your users. So it's a lovely, I mean, people use that kind of 360 term all the time, but I think probably in our case that is true because it's that beginning and the end of that cycle that we're able to work on as two teams under one roof.
And I think one of the main reasons, as I understand it, that you've put together this new syllabus is due to lots of the feedback that you received over the last few years. And so I think it's been great that you've been able to sort of go, okay, here's what people are telling us. Why don't we make it better? Here's what we can do. And that's what you've been able to create. So I think we should jump into a little bit more about this syllabus. But particularly, I'm wondering if you could explain to listeners, how are Rockschool exams different to the ABRSMs, the Trinities, the AMEBs, in your opinion?
Sure. I mean, I guess, well, we're talking about 360. I'm probably going to now talk for a few moments about the difference between certain genres of music and styles of learning. And then really, with the piano syllabus, I decided to kind of throw that all out the window and just say music is music. But traditionally, I think we think about, as I spoke at the top of the show, there's a sort of traditional classical path, which leads into, potentially performing, being involved in classical music, or simply just, people learn music just for those kind of soft life skills and then because it's a nice thing to do. But there is a different skill set involved in popular music, contemporary music, than there is in classical. And that's probably reflected in the two exams. Largely in classical music, although it wasn't always the case, but largely things like improvisation are non-existent, unless you're a continuo player in Baroque music and then you are improvising. I mean, I think the roots of classical music in Baroque was full of improvisation. Bach, by all accounts, was a wonderful improviser, to the point where he was the local church organist. The congregation couldn't sing along with the hymns because he was improvising too much. That was always a complaint.
I haven't heard that story, but I like it.
Yeah, it's a great. And it's absolutely true. I mean, within his own time period, he was not particularly well known. It was only years later when Mendelssohn, the composer, kind of unearthed all his stuff and said, "Hey guys, we should be listening to this. That we really appreciate Bach for the genius that he was." But I guess as orchestras got bigger, you can't have 90 people in a symphony orchestra improvising or deciding, what the tempo is going to be, what the dynamic is going to be. It's the conductor's job to interpret the piece for the entire orchestra. So as a classical musician, you need to be able to read brilliantly. You've got to be able to play the pieces brilliantly. You've got to have a degree of technical proficiency, but it's not for you, unless you're a soloist, to put your imprint on the music. And that would be reflected in the examination syllabuses for when you're studying classical music. Whereas popular music is almost the opposite of that. Largely you're playing in bands, you're playing in solos. Sometimes you'll come into the room. There'll be very little music sketched out for you. You might not have music. You might be totally using your ears. You might have a chord chart. You've got to come up with your part from that. So the Rockschool syllabus and exam is designed to really focus on the practical skills that you'll need to be a contemporary musician. Am I saying forget about sight reading? Absolutely not. I mean, there are many, many wonderful musicians that don't read a note of music, and that's absolutely fine. You can actually take a Rockschool exam without reading a note of music. There are options in there so that you can find a pathway through to do that, and I think that's absolutely fine. But you do limit yourself because there are certain situations where someone's going to present you with a part of music, and if you don't read at all, you're not going to do very well. You might not get booked for that gig again. It might limit what you can do in certain types of recording situations. So being able to do both, being able to read and have great ears and improvise is the ultimate kind of place that you want to be in. But we have alternatives. So if you don't like sight reading, you can have what we call the I and I, improvisation and interpretation. So there are sections of the exam where you'll have a chord sequence and you'll be asked to do a short improvisation over it, or you'll be given a melody and then you're asked to interpret that melody and then develop it. So those are skills that will be very, very common that you'll need in a popular contemporary environment, whether it's rock, pop, jazz. You'll need to be able to go, like, you've got an 8-bar solo coming up, you've got a 16-bar solo coming up, and you need to be familiar with that. So there are those kind of bits in there that you don't have necessarily with a classical form of study that are really useful. We've got the options that most other exam boards have these days. You can do a face-to-face exam, you can do a recorded video exam, or you can do a live stream exam where the examiner is there on the end of a video, but is observing that piece live. And a lot of people pivoted over the pandemic to doing sort of video exams. Some have kept doing it, some have switched them off. We still would prefer face-to-face. It's a great experience to be performing to someone in a room. It adds that element. But lots of our customers still love to do video, so we continue to offer both those options. And in terms of the repertoire that we have, it's definitely varied. It's called Rockschool, but it isn't just rock and pop. There'll be Latin, there'll be jazz, there'll be reggae, there'll be fusion, there'll be funk. It's probably better to think about it as contemporary music rather than just pure rock. But those are the differences. The exams will focus on the technical studies that you need. There'll often be examples of a funk study, a pop and a rock study, or a metal study, and you can pick the one that most suits you, the styles that you enjoy playing. So there's an element of tailoring it to the music that you love with practical skills that a contemporary musician needs. A long answer, but that's the difference.
Yeah, I think it was summarised well. And I think the other big difference is backing tracks too, that are encouraged, would you say, or they have to be used? How does it work?
I mean, yes and yes. There will be a mixture, particularly, when we get onto the deeper dive into the piano syllabus, there will be some solo pieces. I mean, even in the guitar-based drum syllabus we had pieces that were just for guitar, but the only part of the backing track that was going was a vocal. It was a duet. Again, in contemporary music, you have it to a degree. In classical music, as I said, you've got to lock in with a continuo player if you're playing Baroque. But in pop music, rock music, jazz, funk, whatever you're going to do, it's the groove that you've got to lock in with. If you're the bass player, you've got to lock in with the drummer. You've got to pick and choose. Am I really locking in with the kick, or am I locking in with the snare? Or in this style, is it the hat? Is it the hi-hat I've got to dive into? And then, as a guitarist, I've got to find my little gaps here in the rhythm, to play my little grooves, my little riffs, whatever you're playing. So to being able to have really professionally recorded backing tracks in great studios with fantastic musicians, it allows us to bring that kind of authentic rock school experience to the students. Norton's kind of driving passion was to bring great musicians into education. We can't take them all around the world to every exam, but what we can do is capture those performances in the studio and then have backing tracks that are live, not programmed up, where there's an interaction happening in the room that kids can really enjoy and play with. And the horn section that we did was a great example. We recorded that syllabus with all of the horns in the room. So they're playing live, and then we pull one of the parts out and you replace that horn section. So you've got to blend your sound, your intonation with those other musicians to make a section. And it's the same with rhythm section stuff. You drop your part out, you've got to find the groove with the bass player and the drummer if you're the guitarist, or however you want to mix it up. So yeah, it's a really important part of what we do.
Yeah, it's such an important skill to have, just listening, being able to listen, balance, work out what your role is, all of those kinds of things, super important. Why don't we take a moment to actually have a listen to, I'm thinking maybe Pink Pony Club from the new syllabus. Could you just tell us briefly about that and maybe where it was recorded? Because I know there's a story to that too.
Yeah, so we've done about half a dozen projects at Abbey Road Studios over the years. We did our classical piano project there in Studio 2, and then we've done a bunch in Studio 3. And Studio 3 is a great studio. It's one of the smaller studios, but it's the perfect size for kind of doing small group rhythm section stuff with a great history in there. Pink Floyd did Dark Side of the Moon in there. Amy Winehouse has done stuff in there. Nile Rodgers has done stuff in there. The Beatles used it as well for a lot of their sort of later albums. You can kind of feel the history when you walk into that place. So we did the piano syllabus in Studio 3. We did it with a selection of pianos, beautiful Yamaha Grand in there. One piano that maybe we'll talk about in a little bit more detail as we look at one of the other tunes. We put a string section in as well, which is great. Rock school strings. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Lots of great pop records have strings on there, as well as classical. This is one of the pop pieces that we chose, but we'll dive into the classical side of the syllabus shortly. And we had some absolutely fantastic musicians on this. A lot of them the string section came straight from Hamilton in the West End, did our session in the afternoon, went back to Hamilton in the evening. Amy, who's on vocals that you'll see here, is an award-winning singer and stand-up comedian. She's up at the Edinburgh Festival at the moment doing her one-woman show up there. She's a triple threat. She's, she sings, she acts, she dances. She's absolutely great. Some top musicians, Jeff, who you'll see on bass, Worked for many years with Van Morrison as his bass player, Georgie Fame. He was Jamie Cullum's original musical director, great pianist and jazz singer. Worked with some classic kind of sort of 80s, 90s groups, every jazz musician you can think of. And he's had a long history working with Rockschool. So there's so many great musicians in the room there. Jono, who you'll see playing piano, is our composer in residence. So a lot of the Rockschool originals that were written for this syllabus and others are written by Jono. You'll see me on guitar on this one as well. So yeah, and it's a great tune, modern tune by Chapel Roan. And let's have a listen.
I know you wanted me to stay, but I can't ignore the crazy visions of me in LA. I heard that there's a special place where boys and girls can all be queens every single day. I'm having wicked dreams of leaving Tennessee. Here's Santa Monica, I swear it's calling me. Won't make my mama proud, it's gonna cause a scene. She sees her baby girl, I know she's gonna scream. God, what have you done? You're a pink pony girl, and you dance at the club. Oh mama, I'm just having fun on the stage in my heels. It's where I belong, down at the...
I think the big point to make about this and why it's so special, Nathan, is that so many other systems that might have backing tracks will generally use electronic backing tracks. What we're saying here is that you guys at Rockschool have gone to the trouble of hiring incredible musicians and putting them in amazing studios. And these are live instrumentalists that the kids or the students get to play along with when they're using these backing tracks. And I think that is phenomenal. I think it's really special too that you have singers with these, because a lot of the time with pop music, we have to kind of play along either to the YouTube or to a backing track that just is bass, drums, guitar. We don't often hear vocals redone. There was an incredible app, I don't know if you know of it, called Notestar by Yamaha. I used to love recommending this to teachers because it was one of the only apps out there that not only had backing tracks that you could play along to, but the backing tracks had vocals. So you really felt like you were part of the original band. Sadly, the app closed down. I'm sure it's probably copyright something, I don't know. But I'm so glad that you've gone ahead and done the vocals. So yeah, congratulations on that. And if you listeners, if you'd like to watch the video of this, the YouTube video, we'll put that on our show notes page for today's episode.
Great. Yeah, and that was totally really in reaction to customers. In the early days of Rockschool, it was purely instrumental stuff. And as we began to get into doing hit tunes for people, we didn't always put the vocals on. And that was something that people said, please put them on. And again, we're talking about listening to a band and reacting. And while I said it's wonderful if you can read music, practically, when we're doing gigs, those of us that do gigs, we might be on something that's not that grand. It might be a function gig, but you're still listening to the singer going, okay, this is the bridge coming up here. I know because that line is the cue for the bridge. All right, we're in the chorus because I know the chorus groove to this song. And you use the vocals to kind of orientate yourself throughout the song in terms of its structure. So it's not only just nice to listen to it with vocals, but it's another skill that you're sort of picking up by having those in.
Absolutely. So let's say I'm a piano teacher listening. And I'm thinking through my students, which students am I thinking about who might like to try this as a award system?
Well, we've got two questions there, haven't we? What sort of piano teacher might be interested, and then what sort of student is interested? I kind of asked the question, what piano teacher are you, when we were designing this? And I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because there was never a barrier between being sort of an audience and a performer. I mean, if we go back 150 years, there was a piano in every house, right? If you wanted to listen to music, you couldn't just stream it. You had to play. So everybody was involved in making music, and the piano was at the heart of that. It was the way that we made music. And gradually, as the wax cylinder and the early recording technologies came in, the performer and the audience began to separate. So that, we became listeners, we became much more passive. Not everybody learnt to play. And then from that, I'll blame marketing. It's partly my fault, I'm involved in it. But, we began to do marketing. Well, this is classical music, this is jazz music, this is Latin music. And over years, we get pigeonholed into different types of music, different genres. And it can be tribal. I don't know what it was like when you were a teenager, but everyone had their favorite bands, and you could only like this band, you couldn't like that band. And that has sort of spilled over into education. So we think of ourselves as, I'm a classical piano teacher, or no, I'm a pop piano teacher, or I only teach rock music, or I only do this type of music. And yet, as listeners, particularly now with streaming, I mean, I'll take my son as an example. He's kind of 17, turning 18. His playlist is incredibly diverse. He's listening to, classic hip hop, and then he's listening to 70s, and then he's listening to jazz, and then he's listening to funk, and then he's, going into rare groove stuff, and then he's got pop, and he just picks and chooses the songs. Nobody listens to a whole album anymore or really dives into bands. So why do we do that as teachers? Why do we only teach one type of music in one particular style? Because often our customers, the parents, the kids, their listening, their sort of consumption of music is much more diverse. So I think anybody that plays piano, anybody that wants to learn or wants to teach piano would be interested, because we haven't just kept it as rock school piano. It's not just rock and pop and contemporary. This time we've combined classical. We used to have two separate syllabuses. Now we've said, well, look, music is music. There's only 12 notes. That's what we've got to learn. Yeah, we've got to rearrange them in different orders sometimes to make different scales, different keys, but it's all music. We can play classical and enjoy it. We can play the blues and we can enjoy it. We can play jazz. We can play Elton John. We can play Billy Joel. We can play Bob Marley. It doesn't really matter. It's all just, a combination of those same 12 notes. And we should do that, and we should enjoy it and be fun. So I think if you're a teacher that's thought, oh, I'm teaching classical, but some of my kids come in and they want to play a pop tune and I'm not so comfortable with it, then this could be a really great syllabus for you, because you've got classical stuff that you're used to. We've got Mozart, we've got Bach, we've got Bartok. It's all in there. But we've also got, we've got the blues and we've got Bartok. So you can begin to play with some things, like Chapel Roan, a pop tune that's going to be out there. It's going to be popular, but then you can kind of go back to stuff that you feel safe with in the classical. You may find that you attract more students that way, because suddenly if you're teaching a bit of pop, kids are coming in and having fun. Likewise, if you're a pop and rock teacher and you're like, oh, I kind of like classical, but I don't know if my kids are going to like classical. I've never shown them any. Well, you can absolutely do that. You can play and learn some pop music and then say, hey, kids, look, try this. You might like it. And see what it's like. And you can mix that within the same exam if you choose to take one. You've got 3 pieces as well as your technicals that you can do, or a performance certificate, which is just 5 pieces and no technicals. So you've got plenty of options for mixing and matching genres and styles to expand your teaching, expand the kids listening, potentially even expand your customer base a little bit by appealing to slightly different crowds that you might do at the moment.
So I guess what you're encouraging us all to do is pigeonhole ourselves less, I guess, to say, we don't have to be a classical teacher or a pop teacher. We're just a music teacher. We teach kids music, right? And so it's okay to be flexible and do a whole lot of different things. I've always encouraged that, of course, to my audience. And I think this is a great opportunity for them. If you are teaching in this more flexible way, and you do have students who are studying pop and enjoying it, this is a way for them to get recognition for doing that, which they wouldn't necessarily get from some other exam boards, I guess.
You'd have to pick. Do I want to do my classical path or my rock and pop path? Now you don't. And that's going to make some people feel a little uncomfortable. You're not going to be in your comfort zone. But I've always felt, well, the joy of education is I can keep learning. I can challenge myself. How can we expect the kids to come in and not know anything and go on this journey if we're not going to go on a journey with them? So there's nothing more exciting than sort of seeing someone learning with you and, having a teacher kind of being a little bit more like, hey, look, this is new for me. Let's learn it together.
Now, before we dive into the actual new piano syllabus, I just wanted to ask, there's a keyboard syllabus, I think, as well as a piano one. Could you just give us a very quick outline of how they're different?
Yeah. So a little while ago, we felt like something was a little bit missing in the market. Again, being sort of practically based, if we're talking about contemporary music, pop, rock music, you'll learn to play the piano, but a large amount of your time is going to be playing either an electric piano or a keyboard, or probably using the piano keyboard as a MIDI device to, churn up other sorts of sounds in the studio. If you turn up as a keyboard player, some of the time you're going to get asked to play straight acoustic piano, but you're going to get a Nord or something similar in a studio. You're going to have to play a bit of Hammond organ on something. You're going to have to play a synth pad. You're going to have to play some strings. You might have to play a synth bass line. There's going to be lots of stuff that you're going to get asked to do using your piano skills. And that's where the keys syllabus comes in. So it's, yes, you're learning to play, treble clef, bass clef, two hands, but a large part of it is about selecting sounds, manipulating sounds, saying why you've chosen a particular sound, and being sort of exposed to everything from the early kind of 60s, late 60s, 70s, when synthesizers, were massive things that took up a whole room that you plugged different cables into, through to now, going through everything from those early sort of prog rock things into hip hop and modern production, and how you would manipulate sounds and choose them specifically. So that's what the keys is. It's as much to do with that as it is to do with the playing. And then we had a straightforward, what used to be our popular contemporary piano and a classical syllabus. We've kept keys, and then we're sort of merging our other two syllabuses together. They're still there. You can use bits of those repertoire as free choice pieces for this new one. But that's the difference between keys and piano.
RSL Awards leads the way in creative education. We make qualifications and resources for everything from graded music and performing arts exams to practical vocational qualifications in sound engineering, theatre, and games design. So, if you want to be a musician, actor, lighting designer, dancer, or video game creator, we can help. Our success stories include million-selling artists like Ed Sheeran and the sound engineers who record him at studios like Abbey Road. Over 1 million people have an RSL certificate on their wall. So if you want to join the next generation of creatives, visit rslawards.com to find out more.
All right, well, let's dive into a bit more about what you've created, because I know you're very excited by it, and I know there's been quite a few changes from the last syllabus. So your last syllabus was 2019, I think. So tell us about this new one. We've obviously got new music, new styles. One of the coolest things, I think, is that you've shared the syllabus between guitar, bass, drums, keyboard, which gives a huge opportunity now for students with different instruments, particularly in schools and things like that, to play together on the same music. I think that's really cool. So that's just one of the many things. Tell us about some of the changes that you've made.
All right. Well, let's do the changes and then some of the features. So again, listening to our customers, we've got a lot of loyal customers that have taught our contemporary syllabus. And a lot of them would say, I'm going to be honest, when we're teaching, if we get a new pupil coming in and they've done Trinity Rock and Pop, or they've done something classical with ABRSM, and they want to come across to you guys, your syllabus is just too hard. They've done, let's say, grade 3. They want to come over. We're having to put them on grade 3 again because your syllabus just feels like almost a whole grade harder. And who wants to take grade 3 twice? So we listened to that and we kind of looked at, all right, well, what is it that's making this syllabus feel more difficult? Is it really more difficult? Is it more demanding? Have we just set the standards too high? Have the other boards sort of over time just reduced their standards a little bit? And I think that the truth is it's all of those things. I think our standards, we always try to keep them high. I think over time the boards have just dropped theirs a little bit. And we had way too much of certain things. So the biggest difference that people will find if you've previously taught an RSL piano syllabus is that it's much closer to the other boards now in terms of the technical requirements. So we've slimmed down the amount of scales that you need to know and the technical exercises. They're now pretty much mapped against ABRSM and Trinity. So anybody moving between examination boards will find that much easier. Then we dived into why are the pieces appearing to be more difficult? And it really came down to syncopation. Pop tunes are full of syncopation.
So such a big challenge for pop teaching.
And if you're coming from classical into pop, you're not used to things from the early grades starting on an offbeat or having, rests in funny places. But if you're trying to play the melody of a pop tune, it's going to be syncopated. Even a simple one is syncopated. So it was that I think was giving a perception of it being really challenging in the earlier grades. because you had to deal with these funny rhythmical things. Now, with the introduction of classical repertoire sitting next to pop repertoire, we've been able to kind of work them off one another. So we may have something that is, let's call it straighter, with in the earlier grades, with rhythms sitting, nice and evenly on the beat. But we may challenge it with a slightly more challenging tempo, or we may choose a slightly more difficult key center for that piece versus something that is syncopated that might be at a slower tempo with a slightly easier key center around it. So you're able to balance those off, which means now as a student and a teacher, you can challenge yourself in different ways. If you want to play something that is on the beat, that's straighter, that's rhythmically easier, but has maybe got more ornaments in it or at a slightly faster tempo, you can do that. If you want to do something that's more rhythmic and syncopated, it'll be at a more manageable tempo. We've also thought about how much is involved with left and right hand when we're doing those things. And I'm saying we. Jono, who you saw in the video earlier, has done a lot of that work. He's fantastic. And it's made it a much more approachable syllabus. So that's what's changed. With a change means that we have to have a sunset period. So if you're a previous user of the syllabus, you can use the old syllabus for another year. And we're recording this in August of 2025. So it'll run all the way till the 1st of September 2026, at which point you will have to use the new technical exercises in the syllabus that's just about to be released. But the repertoire remains the same. So you can use the old repertoire and bring it across because it was really that syncopation and we've leveled that out. It's just the technical stuff that's changed.
And so talking about some of the new features now, because I know we've got digital offerings, we've got the group play, as I mentioned. Tell us about those.
So it started with guitar, bass and drums. We'd always done them as a trio, but we hadn't always had the repertoire kind of crossing over in as an overtly obvious way. The previous iteration of that one had some shared repertoire at grades 3, 5 and 8. And then what we did with the last iteration of guitar, bass and drums was have that all the way from debut right up to grade 8. So there was shared repertoire, at least 3 pieces in there. Sometimes I think we had 9 pieces in each of those syllabuses. I think at debut, almost 8 out of 9 were shared between the two. And it wasn't always as many as we went up the grades because you have to respect the individual disciplines. But there was a good chunk of repertoire in there that was shared between the two, which is great because you can learn as a band. You can also, if you're teaching and running a music school, you've got kids coming in for their individual lessons, put them together in a band. They've now got the same material that they can learn. A, it's another set of skills they're learning. B, it's great fun. And C, if you're a teacher, music school owner, that's extra revenue. You can run more classes, kids have more fun, you get more time with them, everybody wins. So we've done the same with this version of piano. It's a hybrid product, which is also exciting. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but you've got half of the repertoire in print and then half available digitally. And sort of splitting between the two, actually the shared repertoire has fallen into the digital side of the product. And we've at least got 2 or 3 pieces in there that are shared between guitar, bass and drums. So you've got a crossover there. Again, if you're teaching in a school, you can now get your guitar, bass and drums and pianists together and have a load of fun. A lot of them are vocal tracks as well, so you can even get the singers involved. So that's really fun. And then we come on to the nature of the hybrid product. Over the past couple of years, the top selling product for us on our web shop, on our digital shop, was the ebook upgrade. People were buying a paper book, hard copy book, and then paying a small fee. In the UK over the last year or two, it's been £5. Very small fee for what you get, but you've already purchased the product once, so we didn't want to charge you full price twice. And then you got our interactive ebooks that went with it, and they were really popular. Now we're launching our sort of second iteration of that, and we're using our sort of more proprietary software that we've developed in partnership with another partner, and it's called Riff. Riff is our new interactive sheet music player. It's brilliant. It does the traditional things that you would think of from a sheet music player. You can speed up, you can slow down, you can loop bars, all of that sort of stuff. But what goes beyond that is the ability to really customize what you're viewing as a student and as a teacher. So if you like to just work with a chord chart, I know many piano teachers have said, in pop music, I just want them to feel the harmony. I want them to get the harmony under their fingers. I want them to experiment with the harmony. You know, how can we change the accompaniment of this song before we then go into the very prescriptive part of this is what I need to know to take an exam. And I think that's great teaching. You know, teach around a syllabus. We can all fall into the trap of going, here's your 3 pieces and your scales. Just learn them verbatim, go into the exam, spit it out and move on to the next grade. Yes, you can do that. Yes, you get a certificate at the end of it. But for us, we want to make musicians. We don't want to make certificates. So we would encourage playing around the syllabus as much as possible. So you can do that with Riff. You can turn off your sheet music and just be left with a chord chart. Get used to the feeling of the chords. Think about it as a song rather than something you have to learn for an exam. If you're a guitarist, you can turn off tab. You can turn it on. You can customize it. If you want to put note names above the notes, now a lot of piano teachers, a lot of music teachers, it's an absolute sin. Never write the names of the notes in. But if it helps in an early stage to do that, you've got that option. You can switch it on. You can switch it off. Some people love to use solfege, you know, do, re, mi, fa, so. You can turn that on, you can turn that off. So much functionality in there. But the cherry on the top is that now we've been able to synchronize that with video. So you've got multi-angle video that plays in perfect unison with the score. So you can adjust the sizing of it. If you want to make the video really big, you can put the video on top of the score, to the side of the score. There's multi-angles. So for the lower grades, we've got a nice big wide top-down view of the piano keyboard, so you can orientate yourself into the right octave range, because that's often the problem. You know, those of you that teach, you know, particularly smaller, younger children, they'll have learned something, but they'll have just gone and sat at the piano. You know, they've gone, okay, I remember I've got the 2 black notes, and then the one in the middle is the D, so I want the C, and they can be in the totally wrong octave of the instrument. So having that view to orientate yourself is great. Then a much more narrowed down view on the particular range that you should be looking at so that you can really see what the fingers are doing. And then a third camera comes in as we move up the difficulty level so that you can check pedaling out. So between those 3 angles, you can see the pedaling, you can see the hands. We've got a slightly wider view because, again, as you'll know, as piano teachers, it's not just about playing the notes. It's also about the hand position, you know, what your wrists are doing, you know, how you're sort of arching your fingers. Are you playing to the bottom of the keys, or, you know, for some sort of flat keys, you actually might need to be playing them a little bit closer to where the key meets the body of the instrument in order to get a nice flow, to get your fingering correct. So all of that you can see in Riff synchronized with the music, as well as being able to kind of loop sections and focus in on that and adjust what you're seeing. So it's a really, really great feature to have. And you get 6 of the tracks in the book in that format, 6 on paper. We're not forgetting the fact that you're still going to love to put a bit of paper on your music stand, on your piano and play. And now you'll have the option to upgrade to the other 6 tracks and have everything available in Riff, or buy your hard copy book, or simply, if you're not interested in paper anymore, just go and buy the full ebook version to begin with.
Wow. Okay. My goodness, you just covered so much stuff there. This is an incredible bit of technology. So, quick couple of questions. Does the backing track, I assume there's a way to play the backing track using this software. Is that where that comes from?
Yeah. And then you can select the audio that you want. So if you just want to hear what the piano's doing, you can select that.
Oh, no way, really?
That'll isolate the piano, absolutely.
That's cool. And vocals, like you could just turn on the vocalist?
There comes a point in development when you have to go, okay, we got to
get this out
playing
there.
with this, and we've got to get it out there. But yes, the implementation is there to have your own mixer so that you can mix the backing tracks how you want it. So yes, you'll be able to add in vocals, pull them down, or pick the volume and do a live on the fly mix. The tech is ready. From our end, it's slightly different because you can't just sort of load in a backing track without the piano, and then just the piano. You've got to put the stems in to the system so that then the user is in control of the stems. So there's a little bit of more post-production work for us. But yes, that's coming so that you'll really be able to customize it. And that's going to be fantastic. So yeah, you've definitely got the control that you need, which is the part itself in isolation, the backing track without the part, and then everything together.
Absolutely enough to get started for now. I think teachers are going to be blown away with this, just the ability to help students practice. I think this is the critical factor here, where we were just talking last month all about practice. and all the different opportunities and technology that's out there, but also just the way that we can teach it. And so here's another way that students can get more engaged, because I assume, so technology-wise, just quickly, the teacher has a login, the student has a login. I assume the teacher can assign a student the pieces that they're required to play, or does the student just log in and have their own sort of setup?
So it's a good question. When you purchase the ebooks, one of the first things you'll be greeted with is, do you want to link your ebook to a teacher? The second thing is then a walkthrough of Riff and exactly what it does, and a video of me just showing you all of those things. What we can do is we can drop a link in the show notes to just a quick sort of 60-second overview video of Riff. So you can see it in action, you can see what it does and just some of those highlight features. Yes, it is possible to do that. That is something that at the moment we've sort of reserved for our franchise customers. So if you want to be brought into that sort of franchise system or become an associate Rockschool tutor, that's when it'll start to dynamically link between student and teacher. And yes, then you can literally, here's 4 bars, I've looped it, an extra button pops up that says assign to student. You can assign those 4 bars to the student, and then there is not only that, we unlock things like a chat function so that you can actually talk to students and parents and communicate backwards and forwards. There's a homework function and a bunch of other, business tools and stuff start appearing and becoming available to you. But what you'd have at the moment is if you've both got the ebook, then you're both using the same book like you would a paper book. But there are other functionalities coming on board. We've certainly had a lot of interest in that system in Australia since we announced it a few weeks ago. So we're looking to find partners there to be able to manage that for us. It's a long way from here for us to sort of set up in its entirety. But yeah, those functions are there. They are available, and for your customers in Australia and I guess US. I know you've got a lot of US listeners too. That function is there. It's just about us bringing some other bits and pieces to market in those territories.
I think it's an amazing upgrade what you've created, and I like that you've built this based on what you've seen teachers interested in. So they've been buying the books, and lots of them are getting these upgrades. And now you're going, well, let's integrate this upgrade, which makes lots of sense. So it's now part of the core functionality of the whole system.
Absolutely.
So just to confirm, teachers, if they want to print book, so let's say I'm teaching a grade 3 student and
Yep.
I want them to do the new syllabus. So I could just buy the book.
You can.
And it will have in it 6 pieces.
It will. And a download code that will unlock the other 6 pieces digitally. So you'll just have a little, if you're not a current customer of RSL, you haven't used us before, you'll simply go create an account like we do for all sorts of things. And then in the download section of your account, there's a little icon that will say interactive ebook. Click on that, and then your other 6 open up.
Right. So if I buy one book, I do get all 12 pieces.
Absolutely.
6 of them are printed and they're in my hand. The other 6 I can access through Riff.
Yes.
And the backing tracks for all 12 will be accessible.
Yeah, so you'll also, it's important to think about all the scenarios. So as much as we love the internet, doesn't always work, it's not always available. And I noticed in your sort of notes that you sent through to me in advance, you were like, anybody in Australia, we have terrible internet, So
I did not say that.
So, and it happens, right? You go to a slightly more remote location, you're doing an exam in in the basement of a school building, and there's thick walls and the Wi-Fi cuts out. You can't have that cutting out in the middle of someone's exam. So you will receive just a PDF of all 12 tracks. So you'll always have a digital hard copy, if you like. It's static, it doesn't do anything, it's just a PDF, but it will always get you out of a situation of, okay, I'm in a situation, I haven't got any Wi-Fi, what do I do here? Well, then you've got all 12 tracks on a PDF and you can download the audio as MP3s. So it's very sort of traditional in that sense of you'd get a hard copy book and then some resources that you can download, but we're not charging any extra for it. Now you're getting 6 tracks available in Riff as well as all of the other stuff.
And that'll be a great opportunity for teachers to try out Riff, dip their toes in the water, and then if they would like the 6 of the print version in Riff, that's when they get their upgrade. That's when they'll need to upgrade. Okay, understood.
And some people will say, well, hang on, isn't that going to be cheating in the exam if the kids have got, a little kind of bouncing ball karaoke style going through the music? Yes, But because it's so customizable, you can switch it to exam mode and it removes that kind of sort of blue line that goes through.
So a student will bring in an iPad generally? Is that what most of them would use? Yep. And then they'll plug in their iPad to a local sound system in the exam room for the backing track? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they will, as part of the teaching, you would teach them how to give themselves full control. They'll need to, okay, I'm going to press this button, and they run it. The examiner doesn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think realistically, those of us that have got children know that it works the other way round. The kids will come into the lesson and be showing the teacher how it works. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, why don't we have a listen to a piano solo piece? I'm thinking Steady as a Rock by Pam Wedgwood.
Yeah, this was great. Pam is lovely. There's a few, there's a few composers that are more, let's say, traditional that Rockschool hadn't worked with too much before. Pam was one. Victoria Proudler does a lot of work for other boards. Melanie Spanswick is a great friend. She doesn't live too far. She's in a similar part of London to where we are here. And we've done work around what we do, workshops and things, but we hadn't really brought them in to be part of a syllabus. So it was great that they could come in and that Melanie and Victoria could come down to Abbey Road and play and record their pieces. So those versions that you will hear of their pieces are by them. It's the composer's version that is there on the backing track that you'll learn with. Pam's health is not what it was. And she lives on a little island, the Isle of Wight, which is off the coast of the UK. And it was just, she couldn't travel at the time that we had the session. So instead, we asked Rocky to do it. Rocky was in London. Rocky lives in Kuala Lumpur. Now, he lives in Malaysia. He is our representative there. He happened to be in the UK. Great pianist in his own right. He was voted, I think, Asia's best keyboard player at one point. He's a great guy. He'll love, if he listens to the podcast, he'll love me saying that. But he's a really lovely player, lovely guy. So again, it's sort of keeping it in the RSL family. And he came in, literally, he was in town for some family reasons to see his son and his daughter, and was getting on a plane that day. And I said, Rocky, what time's your plane? He's like, so-and-so. I'm like, right, we'll put you up first. Just get to Abbey Road. We'll record you first. He recorded it, got in the cab, and it was proper rock and roll, and then went off and flew on an aeroplane. So,
you would never know, because he looks as cool as a cucumber in this clip.
He is a cool cucumber. He is.
All right, let's have a listen to Steady as a Rock by Pam Wedgwood. This is Piano Grade 1. Okay, well, Nathan, as we wrap up our conversation today, I thought we should probably ask, what would you say to teachers who've maybe heard about Rockschool, they've thought about it, but maybe they're a little bit nervous to take the plunge?
Well, of course, I'm going to say you should try it, right? But, you should never trust someone who's selling their own product. But the reality is, I don't make anything that I wouldn't buy or that I wouldn't use. Because ultimately, you're never going to sell any that way. I always want to go into a place and go, I wish I'd thought of that. What a brilliant idea that is. Oh, I'd love to have one of those. And so those are the types of products that I want to make, and that's what we sort of stand for here at Rockschool, at RSL, is making things that are practical, that are useful, that are fun, that are engaging, and that are flexible. And I think by kind of pushing down the genre boundaries, we've now got a product that is potentially really useful to whatever background you've come from. If you've come from the classical side and you want to get more into contemporary or pop, if you've come from the pop side or maybe you're a bit frightened of classical music, it gives you that place that you can come to as a starting point. And also, we're really welcoming of people that are coming from other exam boards. So if you're like, I've just spent ages teaching the kids some repertoire from grade 4 with Trinity, and do I swap now? Look, if it's grade 4 for Trinity, it's grade 4 for us. Bring the pieces across. There's no point throwing away all of that prior learning and hard work that you've done. So there is kind of no excuse not to give it a go, wherever you are in the cycle of your teaching. I think you'll find it fun. As we've said, you've got this great digital tech that makes it really interactive and fun for you as a teacher and students to learn. You've got sort of tried and trusted classical repertoire that you'll be familiar with if you're coming from that ground. If you're the other side, there's classic pop tunes. If you're more of a jazz or a Latin fan, we've got that in there. We've got reggae. There's going to be something that you're going to be familiar with and something that you're less familiar with that will challenge you, open up kind of your horizons and hopefully the kids' horizons. So give it a go. What I will say is, if you're a Beatles fan, it's a must, because probably the last clip that we can play as we go out. Yeah, we recorded, obviously, in Studio 3, and Abbey Road is probably most famously associated with the Beatles. So we recorded A Day in a Life. Now, fortunately for us, the very small Challen upright piano that resides in Studio 3, and you would never, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know, it usually sits with the lid down, full of XLR cables strewn on top of it in the corner of Studio 3. But it is the piano that, amongst other things, the Beatles used to record A Day in a Life on. And it's still got, if you flip the lid up, there's always that little bit just to the left of the lowest bass notes. There's a little sort of tiny square on a piano before you get to the edge of the body. That's got several cigarette burns on it from where John and Paul would rest their cigarettes on the edge of the piano while they were writing and playing. It's full of character. It still sounds great. We used it on A Day in a Life. So we recreated that piece with the strings, so you got that orchestral texture, and it's the same studio, it's the same piano, it's the same song that the Beatles recorded. We've also used the Challen on our scales, so that when you hear the scales being played, and again, they're all in Riff. So I don't know if I said that, but even the scales are in Riff. So you've got videos of people playing the scales to really help you with your fingering and all of that sort of stuff. The piano sound that you'll hear there is also the Challen from Studio 3. So there's a load of heritage. The last pop fact that I'll finish with is you'll see me playing acoustic guitar on this one. It's a very small parlor guitar. That guitar is serial number 001 of Ed Sheeran's signature range. And Ed and his guitar manufacturer Loudon gave me that guitar because we did some work on his last North American tour. There was a small QR code on the ticket for every ticket that was sold. If you scan that QR code, you came to a bunch of videos of me teaching you how to play some of Ed's songs, because he's a big fan of music education and also a former RSL alumni. He studied one of our vocational qualifications that I spoke about at the top of the show, as well as other people like Jess Glynn and Nandy Bushell. If you like watching kind of drums, fantastic drums that you said on YouTube, you'll have probably seen Nandy playing with Chad Smith and some other greats. Nandy did all her Rockschool grades as well. So there's a real sort of success story around, if people are again hesitating, should I give it a go? It's those sort of people that did give it a go and really made a success. So 2 bits of pop history. Ed Sheeran's guitar that really should have gone to him, the first one off the production run, 001, but he very kindly gave to us. And the original piano that the Beatles used to record A Day in a Life on at Abbey Road is the one that you'll hear on the video, and that's also the one you'll hear on the syllabus.
I saw a film today, oh boy. The English army had just won the war. A crowd of people turned away, but I just had to learn, having read the book. I love to turn you
So that was A Day in the Life by the Beatles. It's in the Piano Grade 5 syllabus. Thanks for sharing the story of that with us, Nathan. So I think, there's going to be lots of excitement in our listeners and wonder about where I should go to find out more. I want to check this out. Tell us, where should people go? Where can they find the books? Where do they download things online?
Sure. I mean, we've got the lovely problem of, at the time of recording, we're not actually going to be shipping the books out for about another week. But they've been on pre-sale about 2 weeks now. We've sold out of the first print run, which is incredible. We weren't anticipating that. So desperately, the printers are printing more for us. So yeah, get them while they're hot. Depending on where you are in the world, if you want to buy the purely digital product, you can do that at rslawards.com on our online shop. Likewise, if you want to upgrade, that's also the place that you'll come. If you're in Australia, we have a partnership with the AMEB. So you can purchase those from the AMEB store. You can go onto the AMEB website and onto their shop. They're available there. They're also available at all good music resellers across Australia. If you're in the US, you'll find it harder to find the hard copies, the print copies, but come to rslawards.com and you can certainly get a digital copy featuring all that great stuff from Riff that we described earlier.
Fantastic. All right, we'll put all those links into our show notes. Nathan, thank you so much for your time. You are a busy man. You have a lot going on here, and I know you are right in the thick of the final stages of this release. So thank you very much for taking the time to chat with our audience today. Anything to sort of wrap things up or anything that we've missed before we close out the conversation?
No, I think we've covered everything. It's been a great privilege to come and talk to you and the audience today. Please go and check it out. There's lots of stuff online at rslawards.com. Go to the piano section. There's loads of stuff on there. You can watch a bunch of videos, including some that we haven't seen today, as well as have a look at the details of Riff and play around with it. There will be stuff that'll happen across the globe. I know you have listeners everywhere, so there will be workshops happening. I know that we've got future plans for you to do some workshops for us in Australia, so people can come and kind of talk to you about it and see it in real life. I'm off on my travels. A few days I'm off to Dubai, then I'll be coming back, and then we'll be going out to China, and then I'll be off to India. So we're taking it out and traveling and trying to see as many teachers across the world as we can. So look out for those workshops as we do them around the world.
Yes, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as well online to people who are interested. Once I've got hold of the books myself, I can't wait to actually start diving into them and exploring, and particularly explore Riff too. So thank you so much, Nathan. It's been an absolute pleasure today, and we look forward to getting more exposure to all the great things that you've been working on.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, I really hope that today's interview has inspired you to go and explore a little bit more about Rockschool. Check it out. If you're here in Australia, it's the AMEB who look after Rockschool. And of course, if you're in the UK and any of the other countries where they operate, they have their own representatives who you can contact for more. All the information is definitely on their website, rslawards.com, and or search for Rockschool exams. And if you're in Australia, I'll also be heading over to the Australian Piano Pedagogy Conference, which is going to be held in South Australia in Adelaide next year. That's 2026 in July. And I'll be doing a presentation over there for AMEB all about this new syllabus. So I can't wait to do that, and really happy to answer questions if they come up as best I can anyway. I'm really looking forward to diving in and seeing and exploring more myself, and I'm more than happy to answer questions if they come up. Well, thanks again for tuning in to today's episode, the first of our Pop, Contemporary and Jazz Month here at Top Music. Make sure you go and check out our other piano podcasts. Of course, it's the Top Music Piano Podcast with Rachel Ehring. It's amazing. Go if you haven't explored it. It's out on Spotify. It's on all of the podcast players. And indeed, if you are a Top Music Pro member, we now have a dedicated page for listening to the podcast in your app. So you don't even need a different podcast player. Just open up the Top Music Pro app and use the More function on the right-hand side to head to podcasts. And you can listen on the go, close the app, pop it in your pocket, and do the washing up, walk the dog, whatever it is that you would like to do while you listen to me or Rachel on our podcasts. Hope you've enjoyed listening to the show. I'll speak to you again same time next week. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages both now and into the future?
I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.